Thank you so much, Rabbi Mark and IJS. I can't believe almost 4 years of collective practice together. That is something worth celebrating and being really grateful for. Thank you, of course, to Rachel as well for holding our tech space. So in the spirit of gratitude, I invite you to just take a moment to thank yourself for being here, for showing up to your practice, but also for showing up for one another. It's such a gift to be able to practice this quality of being in community, to slow down the motion for just a little bit and pay attention to our hearts. So let's take our seat as we begin together. Take your time finding a posture that's comfortable, really tuning in to what you need and want here and now. That attunement is every bit a part of the practice as the stillness, listening in deeply to find a shape that will support you in being fully present and connected to your own aliveness, the truth of your body in this moment. Your eyes can be open or closed or anywhere in between. Take these first moments just to be present to your arrival, to your beginning. Take some cleansing breaths, some big inhales through the nose and exhales through the mouth. Then allowing your breath to find a rhythm that is steady and fluid. Feel yourself being called to witness your breath. Just watching this beautiful breath, this exchange between each one of us, and indeed between all living beings. Just bearing witness to the process of coming home to the heart again and again. If you haven't already, I invite you to take a moment to gently note in your mind why you came to practice today. And allow that to be a kavanah, not a goal or expectation, simply an invitation to the heart. May we meet this moment with that kavanah, that intention. And may we allow ourselves to be met in that spirit. When you're ready to open your eyes, you can just notice what you notice, or absolutely feel free to keep your eyes closed and just rest in your awareness. So this week, we reach ever closer to the end of the book of Shemot, of Exodus, as we prepare to conclude this chapter of our liberation story. And notably, this week's Parsha, Vayakel, is one of gathering. Vayakel Moshe et kol adat b'nei Yisrael. Moshe gathered together the whole community, much like we're doing today. And each time we gather to sit and practice our wholeness in community. In fact, I love thinking about the act of sitting together as a kind of gathering practice. We gather in our attention. We gather our collective sense of presence. We gather in community. We gather our parts, our feelings, our bodies, our souls. And I even feel so often, maybe you have this sense as well, of being gathered across space and time among our people. But there is one more form of gathering in this week's Parsha, which jumps out to me. This Parsha features an ingathering of gifts or trumot for the Mishkan, for this tabernacle, this little sanctuary that our people carried with us through the wilderness. K'hu me'itchem truma l'Adonai kol nediv libo. Take from among you gifts to the ever-present one, anyone whose heart is so moved. And in fact, this phrase, kol nediv lev, everyone whose heart is moved, is repeated numerous times throughout the Parsha. And I can't help remembering back to the opening chapters of the book of Exodus, which repeated references to Pharaoh's heart being hard, stiff, heavy, and stuck. And now we prepare to end the book of Exodus with repeated references to hearts that are moved, soft, open, and generous. So fluctuations of the heart are not a foreign concept. I too know the experience of hardening of my own heart, sometimes by something external, other times by internal forces. Sometimes it's a more dramatic shift, other times more subtle. And I also know the experience of my heart being moved toward generosity, openness, and softness. This fluctuation is the perpetual movement of the heart. At one moment, heavy, the next light, at one moment hard, the next moment soft. And this happens so often, most of the time, I hardly notice. So our sitting practice is a helpful place for us to pay attention to the hardening and softening of our hearts towards ourselves and also others. As we sit, we have an opportunity to bear witness to those gentle and sometimes more dramatic fluctuations. And I would consider this a practice of emet, of truth. According to the Torah's understanding of the body, the heart is the seat of our psychological capacities. It's the place in which our drives and motivations live. And we can pay attention to our hearts in practice simply by attuning ourselves to the physical sensations in our heart center. As we come into a loving or a more loving relationship with our hearts, we aim to soften where we can. And as we come flush with our own suffering, we aim to hold ourselves in compassion. As we become aware of our desires, even and most especially the things we want, but may not be able to have, we allow our wishes to be felt. This is the practice of chesed, of loving kindness. So let's sit once again as we pay attention to the quality of our hearts. And I invite us to think of our practice as an opportunity to cultivate a quality which our Parsha calls chacham lev, a wise heart. As Aharon of Karlin, an 18th century Hasidic master, said, wisdom of the mind alone, without wisdom of the heart, is worthless. So let's practice building the wisdom of the heart. I invite you to find your seat again. If you need to move around in your body a little bit. Your eyes can be open, closed, or anywhere in between. And just take a breath, sense your belonging to this moment, to this body, to this place where you are sitting. A full in-breath and a full out-breath. Notice if you can breathe into your heart, the front of the heart, the back of the heart. Even breathing energetically into the different chambers of the heart. I invite you to bring your attention to what's happening in your heart space. What physical sensations do you notice? What is the energetic quality of your heart space? As you consider what's happening in the world, what happens to your heart? As you consider a relationship with someone that feels particularly alive for you in this moment, what happens to your heart? As you consider your own suffering, what happens to your felt experience of your heart space? Can you hold yourself in compassion as you notice the gentle fluctuations in your heart? Perhaps you notice a deep want, a desire. Can you just allow yourself to feel what you feel without doing anything at all? Just allow. As we continue for another couple minutes in silence, I invite you to continue paying attention to your heart, to observe how it moves, to soften and allow where you can. And I'll bring us back together with the sound of my voice. Begin to deepen your breath. I invite you to place one hand onto your heart. We acknowledge that while our hearts necessarily harden and soften as we encounter the world around us and inside of us, we are also endowed with a lev tahor, a pure heart, with a wholeness that is always there, even when we must endeavor to rediscover it. As we move into the day and the days ahead, may we continue to be curious and pay attention to our hearts. When our hearts harden, may we remember to soften. And when they soften, may we allow them to lead the way. You can keep your eyes closed or open them as I offer a prayer from Psalm 51. And though I cannot hear your voices literally, I invite you to chant each line after me, energetically even, as we invite our breath and these words to help us sustain our practice as we go forward. Lev tahor, Rali Elohim, Veruach nachon Kaddish vekirbi. Lev tahor, Rali Elohim, Veruach nachon Kaddish vekirbi. Al tashlicheni mirfanecha veruach kodeshecha al tikach mimeni. Al tashlicheni mirfanecha veruach kodeshecha al tikach mimeni. Hashiva li sason yishecha veruach nediva tismecheni. Hashiva li sason yishecha veruach nediva tismecheni. Create in me a heart that is pure, God. Renew within me a steadfast breath. Don't cast me away from your presence. Don't take from me your holy breath. Return to me joy in your help. May I be entrusted with a generous spirit, a generous breath. Over to Mark.
Beautiful practice, Rabbi Jenny Solomon. Thank you so much. Friends, let's just stay with that. Stay with where you are for a moment to hold space for those who are in mourning, observing yard sites. Whether you're reciting Kaddish or not, if you can stay present to create a minyan of support, that would be appreciated and a beautiful way to seal our practice today. If you are reciting Kaddish, if you're in mourning, if you have a yard site, if it's your custom to join in the Kaddish, you're welcome to put the name or names of anyone that you're honoring today in the chat now or after you recite Kaddish. And we thank Rachel for sharing the words of the Kaddish on the screen. If you're reciting them, I invite you to join me by rising in body and in spirit. And you can unmute at this time. Rachel, maybe you can make it just a tad larger. That'd be great. Yitgadal Dash
Darkness
Miraba,
Miraba,
Yama Didrach
Madraki
Yute,
Yute,
Luli Malchute,
Katina Pute,
Kayeton Uvyoneton,
Kayetun Kon,
Ayed Beit
Beit
Israel,
Israel,
Ba'agala
Gala
Ubitmar
Ubitmar
Biru,
Bimu Amen.
Heshme Rabba
Barak
Mevarach,
Barak Yamamaya,
Amaya,
Barak
Yishtabach,
Yishtabak,
Ar Vikamam
Safari
Bihase,
Yase,
Yithadar
Hadar
V'Kalev,
Kalev,
Al Shemedu
Mahsa,
Nase,
Yekud,
Ela Mikol
Mikol,
Birchata V'Shirata,
Birta,
Ushbechata
Ishbegata,
V'Nechata,
Nechata,
Ran Ba'ama,
Yamama, Yishme,
Yehesh Lama Rabba
Yehezme,
Minu,
Shema,
B'chaim Aleinu V'Al
Hane Yeko
Yisrael,
Israel, Yisrael,
Yiseh Shalom
Shalom,
B'mamav, Yaseh Shalom.
Shalom,
To Ko
Ko
Yisrael,
Israel,
Ko
Ko
Yisrael,
Yisrael,
Yisru.
Benimu, Amen.
Amen. Amen. Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. Zichronam Livracha, may the memory of all those who are being remembered today be a blessing in your lives. Friends, want to thank you for joining us and putting in the chat. Wonderful lineup of teachers we have for the rest of this week. Tomorrow, Rabbi Shepa Gold will be here to lead us in practice. My dear colleague and friend Firkins Reed will be guest hosting tomorrow. I'll be back on Wednesday to host for Rabbi Susan Leiter. Thursday, Zach Newman of Hamakom, and on Friday, Kimi Duenas of Jutina Eco will lead us as we sit into Shabbat. So we have a beautiful lineup of teachers and practice this week. We hope you'll join us as we conclude our 4th year of practice together. Wonderful to be together. Much gratitude to Rachel Huguet for holding our text space today, and our teacher, Rabbi Jenny Solomon at Beth Meyer Synagogue in Raleigh, North Carolina. And as always, you're invited to stay on for a conversation with Jenny about today's teaching and practice. And feel free to, the chat is open. Feel free to use it just to share reflections on your experience with this heart-centered practice today. Or to ask a question. And if you do have a question, please preface it by writing question in all caps. And it'll be a little bit easier for me to keep tabs on that. Jenny, that was really wonderful. And one of the many things I noticed was my eagerness to share with you what came up for me. That, oh, I can't wait till we get to talk and I can tell her what's happening. Just be quiet, Mark. Just be quiet, Mark. Just sit there. But now I can. So, one of the things that has been interesting to me since, the heart comes up a lot in these sits is, I always think, well, is it really like the actual heart in the heart space, or is it what that represents? And so that question always pops up in my mind. Am I paying attention to the heart? Like, is there actually wisdom in the physical heart, or what does it actually represent in the body? So I actually want to invite you to talk a little bit about that, about the heart as metaphor versus the actual heart space of the body, which we bring attention to. So that's a question. The way I kind of resolved that for myself today was that I said, well, the heart is actually pumping the blood throughout the entire body. Like, there's no part of my body that is untouched by the heart. So that helped me. I actually was tuning into the pulsations of the circulatory system, centered in the heart. And that kind of helped me tune into the wisdom of the body, really, and what noticed that. So that was very helpful for me. That was really helpful for me. So I just wanted to invite you to comment on that. When we use these phrases of the heart, the lev, whether it's pure or hardened or whatever, what are we really talking about there? Or what are you talking about when you use it?
I love that question. Thank you for the invitation to think about it. Well, part of what I love is that there's so many layers, as you mentioned. There's so many ways we might understand that. And we may, in our practice, feel really drawn to pay attention to the actual physical nature of our heart beating. And I love how you shared, in a sense, when we think about the physical work of the heart, it is kind of our wholeness. It is our whole being, because there's no part of our body that isn't being enlivened and animated by the work of the heart. And like you, sometimes I have a nice practice of placing, I'm sort of putting my hand to the screen, but of placing 2 fingers gently on my wrist to feel my pulse. I guess some people can do that in their neck. I can't do that in my neck very easily, but I can feel it very gently on my wrist. And it's very calming. It's very soothing to my nervous system just to be reminded that there's this quality of netzach, of perseverance, of steadfast caretaking when I'm not even thinking about it. That's just always there. So that's kind of one layer of the physical. And then I also just appreciate that the idea, whether it's true or not, but this idea that I think lives in our Torah, in our texts, that the heart is the seat of our desires. In my own work over this past couple years, I've been thinking a lot and working a lot with the nature of desire. Of course, this is part of our meditation practice, but I think it's even bigger than that. It's sort of a part of being human. And one of the things that I am finding, it's like so miraculous, even though I may have known this intellectually for a long time, is that when I allow myself to just desire, just want what I want, it's so much easier to not, first of all, weaponize it against other people beyond my sit. But also, I just notice how allowing myself to want what I want takes actually, it allows the desire to transform itself. And I find that I'm actually desiring that thing less. And I'm desiring something else, you know. But that's what happens. Rather than trying to sublimate the desire and squash the desire, to just allow the desire to be.
Just to name it. You know, it's interesting because I'm going to take, there were some great questions in the chat I want to bring in. One, not in order, but this one relates to it. Rana was asking, you mentioned we might acknowledge what our heart longs for, but we cannot have. What's the point of bringing our attention to that which is not possible? So I want to invite you to address that in terms of, for me, I think I'll just throw in that noticing and naming yearning, right? That we have in our tradition that's not a bad thing. In fact, in the weekday Amidah, there's a whole slew of things that we, quote, asked for, right? That we request, whether we're going to get them or not. It's just kind of an acknowledgement of human dependence or interdependence or, reliance. So I want to invite you to share on that. What's the point of bringing our attention to that which is not possible? Would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually just part of our humanity. It's part of what it is to be alive, is to want. And the work of noticing those wants in a loving way, I think can actually help us live when those wants can't be met. I think it's a way that I can practice having compassion on myself. It's a way that I can be with actually some humility. I know I want this. I want this for someone else, or I want this thing, or I want this change in the world, or this shift in the world. And I'm one person.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's a paradox. I'm sorry, go ahead. When you finish.
Yeah, I can only do what I can do. And so again, I mean, the wants will be there whether we take notice of them or not. And so the question then for me often becomes like, do I want to sort of act habitually, or God forbid, act and create unintentional harm because these wants and drives are alive within me? Or can I use this practice as a space to be with those wants in a non-judgmental, loving way, and then they're not as much in the driver's seat.
Oh boy, so many good questions here. In the 7 minutes that we have. Well, one of this, a very practical, tachlis question that Gail is asking about. I try breathing into my heart space physically, but I don't have a feeling of that location physically. And she wrote, actually, I know how to breathe into my hand, my foot, but not my heart. How does one physically feel or perceive the heart? It's interesting. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I love that question, and it's a great thing to pay attention to day to day. That might change, but like Mark, you really brought our attention to that. Well, we can breathe into our hands. We can breathe into our neck. The heart, the energy of the heart, the work of the heart is literally flowing through the entire body. There is no cell that is untouched by the heart's energy. So I would say,
There's many points of access to the heart. Yeah, really,
correct,
to the body,
correct.
right?
To not let that be an obstacle.
Right, right. I do want to lift up, I'll get back to some of the questions in the chat. Like I also was thinking there are so many variations in our tradition that are descriptive about the condition of the heart, the nature of the heart. Of course, there's the hard-heartedness, like you said, there's the stiffening of the heart, all these different verbs used in connection with Pharaoh, which of course, we're coming up. Passover in a couple of months. So we're almost in that season of considering what does it mean to harden our hearts. Um, so you were talking about having a lev tahor. One of them is this lev tahor, and you started with this week's Torah portion, which is the reference to nadiv lev, willing heart. Um, and so I'm juxtaposing these three: lev tahor, pure heart. Maybe that's the essential heart. And then on top of that, layered on that is the kind of conditioned heart, which is sometimes it's open and soft and willing, and sometimes it's hard and closed and not willing, right? And resistant. So here's my question. Here's the question: is whether is it always a problem to have a hardened heart? Is that or are we just trying on a moment-to-moment basis to say what is the condition of heart? What is the wise condition of the heart right now? Should I soften it? Should I close it a little bit? I'm just thinking about how the heart itself constricts and expands and has its own rhythm, or are we aspiring to always having an open, soft, uh, giving, pure heart?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know that there's an answer to that one, but
I don't think that's possible in my experience. So I think what I'm trying to hold myself to is growing my awareness. And with that awareness, hopefully I can sort of move more wisely. I mean, I've been noticing it a lot, even as I listen to different people commenting on the war right now, and I can listen to certain folks espouse one path forward and then other people espouse a very different, and depending on what I'm listening to, I feel my heart opening and closing, and I don't think anybody's wrong. I mean, what none of us know, but just being aware
right.
of what happens, I guess.
Let's lift that up because I think that's a really good example of there not being like a right answer, like, oh, I need to soften my heart, but it is really an accomplishment in and of itself, simply to be aware of, I'm hearing this and my heart is closing down, right? I'm shutting down, right?
Correct.
And then to notice any judgment on top of that, like if I were a more advanced practitioner or a more compassionate person or a better person, that wouldn't happen. And saying, all right, I'm going to let that go. This is just the truth that I'm closing down. Or I really like, give me more of that. I really agree with you. I'm very expansive. I feel very connected. So we're just aiming here for just growing first growing an awareness of our reaction, and then deciding whether like sometimes maybe it may be that like it's really like Hesed, loving kindness, and Deen and Gevura, right? About having right? About how to discern a wise boundary there. By the way,
Yeah.
so we're throwing here,
Yeah.
Nancy wrote that Reb Zalman said that when we're looking for God, we can feel our pulse and say, "Oh, there you are," which
Oh,
is like such a great, that's worth lifting that up and
I love
making
that.
that a daily
Thank you.
practice.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, I mean, when I get angry, and for some reason people sometimes aren't sure if I get angry, I can assure you I do. Ask anybody in my family. And when I get angry, I can feel my heart harden, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, there's actually, first of all, there's something usually very self-protective about that.
Mhm.
And again, it's just part of the human experience. So knowing that, first of all, it allows me when I feel less angry to notice the shift and the change. And then when I am actually angry, perhaps to um, consider wisely whether or not it's the right moment to act upon that anger or just to be with it.
All right, that's well, thank you for sharing that, and thanks for the vulnerability. And I've wondered that too sometimes. Um, good to know. All right. Jenny, as always, such a pleasure to be with you and your presence and the gift of your teaching and practice. And uh, for those who don't, I just want to recommend Jenny often offers beautiful practices for those of you who are online on Facebook and Instagram too. Yeah. So
Trying.
encourage you to follow Jenny, Rabbi Jenny Solomon. And again, welcome to the Beth Meyer folks who may be here, or folks from the Triangle in North Carolina who are here. And always grateful to you, Jenny, for this opportunity to practice together.
Likewise.
And Rachel, many thanks to you, and above all, thanks to each of you for being here today. We'll look forward to tomorrow's practice with Rabbi Shefa Gold. So I will not be here, but hope you can make it, and I'll look forward to being back with people on Wednesday. Many blessings, everyone.